Awesome. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. It's 6:30 p.m. sharp, so thanks for joining in early. And we'll just wait for a couple of more minutes. But meanwhile, yeah, let me admit people as they are joining in. We have Ram and we have Saurya. Hi, Ram and Saurya.
Hey Ram, hey,
Hi.
good to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Let me know where you're joining from and what do you do? Just quickly introduce yourself.
Sure, Ram.
Yeah, hi,
I'm.
Go ahead, Ram. Sorry,
Hello.
I'll get to you.
Hey, no worries. No, I'm Ram Prabhakaran, based out of Manchester in England.
Okay.
I've been following you for quite some time, so I thought it would be good to connect.
Awesome. Great, and thanks for joining in on time. Saurya, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about earlier. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi Ram. So I'm Shaurya. I'm right now at in New York. So I'm doing my second master's at Columbia.
Okay.
And I'm doing master's in computer science, and NLP is my track. So I wanted to check out. Like, I have been following you, and I wanted to see what the talk was about. Yeah.
Amazing. Great.
Yeah. Good.
In the chat, we have Pratik from Nagpur. Hi, Pratik. He's a chatbot developer. AS asks, where are you from in Hyderabad? So I'm based out of Gachibowli, Kondabur area. For all the other people, feel free to turn on videos if you're comfortable, but no worries, even if you want privacy. Absolutely. Awesome. Hi, Ram. You're on mute, but that's fine. I can hear you. What you say?
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no worries at all. Awesome. Great. I think we are at 6:32. So without wasting much time, I'll quickly introduce in 30 seconds who I am. The talk is more about helping you and just answering questions if I could be helpful to any of you. And yeah, so let me just introduce in 30 seconds or less, then we'll get to all the questions. So I'm Ramsri, currently based out of Hyderabad, India. I am running two small revenue making SaaS businesses in NLP, mostly question.ai and supermeme.ai. Besides that, I teach NLP courses. I have one course on Udemy and I teach a live cohort based course on Maven. Beyond that, I do AI consulting and I've been a content creator in NLP and AI space on social media in the last 3-4 years. And prior to that, I worked in US for about 6 years before moving back to India. And then I stayed for 1.5 years in Singapore exploring entrepreneurship. That's about me quickly. And without wasting much time, let's get to it. Hi, Rohan. I can see your face.
Hello.
Well. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's do a quick round of introductions. And one thing is, feel free to share your, LinkedIn or Twitter profile, one social profile. And I encourage all the people to connect with each other. So whatever profile you're comfortable with, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, please share in the chat. And yeah, I think someone was not on mute. Yeah, thanks, Saurya. Hi, Saurya, I can see you as well. Awesome. Yeah, I was just saying, feel free to share your social profiles and let's do a quick roundabout. Whoever is willing to speak. If you're unable to speak, that's fine. You can just mention in the chat as well. Let's start with you, Rohan.
So, hello everyone. I'm Rohan Tachan, currently fifth year undergrad at BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus, pursuing a double majors in economics and computer science. So, to give a quick overview, I'm working on Model Card AI, a marketplace for pre-trained machine learning models. So, I'm here just to get some feedback and ideas from you particularly about the deployment part of that.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for introducing Rohan. Ram, do you want to go ahead again?
Of course, Ram. I believe we have too many Rams on this call, right?
Yeah.
I'm Ram Prabhakaran. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm based out of Manchester, England, and I used to live in East Coast, Connecticut. UConn is my alma mater. I did my master's there, and after spending probably 10 years in East Coast, I moved to England, and I'm probably 20 to 23 years experienced. I work as an enterprise architect. I work with all major cloud providers and been following this NLP and AI space for quite some time now. I do some Kaggle competitions, but I'm not yet a grandmaster in Kaggle. So my intention is to join here, learn bits and pieces about people who are driving it from the front, and also learn how to do the LinkedIn content creation and things like that. So that's the reason for me on the call, and good to connect with everyone. Ramshree, Saurya, Rohan. It's great to be connected.
Awesome. Thanks for introducing Ram. Saurya, do you want to go ahead quickly?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I'm Shaurya. I'm right now in New York. I'm doing my master's at Columbia in NLP. This is kind of my second master's. So I did my undergrad and master's as part of dual degree from IIT Kharagpur, that was in computer science. Back then, I was mostly a crypto and security researcher. So after that, I worked at Microsoft, Hyderabad. I was living in Nanakram Guda, Gachibowli. So
Okay.
I guess I lived there for like 2.5 years, and after Microsoft kind of went back to Kharagpur for research. That didn't really work out. I guess I just went back mostly for the campus because I was missing it. So after that, I kind of joined. I ventured into entrepreneurship. I am co-founder and CTO of a startup, but I don't have hands-on role right now, but it's still ongoing. And as part of that, I wanted to really work on, Indian languages, NLP and speech. So my research focus shifted to more of the NLP side. So earlier I had apprehensions about getting into AA and, ML, because even though I did courses and assignments, they were black boxes to me, but I could see the power and the impact. So eventually it was too hard for me to resist the temptation. So I'm transitioning from a security background to an NLP and speech side of things. At Columbia, I'm actively doing speech projects. Right now, I'm working on Tamil and Telugu ASR, and even I'm planning to work on Sanskrit. And there is this language called Avestan. So I'm planning to do some NLP on that for my thesis. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Great.
I can go ahead next. I'm
Go ahead.
Jayan.
Hi, Jayan.
Yeah, I'm a PhD student at Purdue University right now, working on robotics, machine learning, and AI. Prior to this, I got my master's from University of Pennsylvania, and my based out in Philadelphia, and my master's was mostly on machine learning and decision sciences. And my undergrad is back from India in electrical engineering from RV College of Engineering, Bangalore. And I'm here because this whole thing sounds very exciting to me, that you build something and then it generates you some revenue and you can leverage your skills in very unique ways. Like I'm a PhD student, so I've mostly been doing research, and I also want to gain some insight and knowledge into how these things technologies which we learn can be deployed and put into actual use to like customers who actually can make use of things. So that was the most interesting part, and that's the reason I'm here.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll get to I'll explain more on what I've done so far so that we can help each other. Awesome. And who wants to go next? Can you please raise hand? That's easier if some of you don't want to talk. Okay. Please go ahead, Sab.
Yeah, hey, so my name is Sabrinath. I mean, I'm currently based out of the UK. So I used to live out of Bangalore for almost 5 years. So I've done my engineering and MBA from India. So yeah, I'm actually a product person. So, but kind of, I'm a big fan of bootstrap startups, and so yeah, that's mainly why I follow a bunch of folks, in the Indian ecosystem. And yeah, so that's mainly why I'm here. It's just out of curiosity, and I'm also just dabbling with a couple of ideas. I don't have too much experience in coding. I used to work as a software engineer like for a couple of years, but that is like quite long back. So I'm just here to just understand from Sai as to like how did you choose a problem space? How did you go about building stuff? Like for example, you had mentioned a bit about no code, you not being a full stack developer, then how you went on to learn a few things. So yeah, that was cool. So I just thought I'll probably like learn from you. So I've also been like dabbling with no code a bit in the past. So yeah, that's mainly why I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Chaitanya, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Ramshi. Hi, everyone. So my name is Chaitanya. I am based out of Hyderabad. So I was a co-founder for a couple of startups before this. One was called Tinman, and one was called Abundant. So Abundant is still operational. I'm just not a part of that anymore. But right now I took a break in between, and basically I'm not a product guy. In both startups I focused on operations, predominantly operations, legal, and basically everything which was not tech. And so now I'm trying to get my hands a little dirty with tech itself. Although my engineering is in computer science, I've never really coded to save my life. So I started learning a little bit now, long after my engineering days are over. And one of the things I was interested in was AI also, and which I did a course in IIIT to try and understand what it is and to try to get a primer out of it. And now I'm trying to get basically a practical sense of how things are built and deployed. So that's where I stand here.
Amazing. Thanks for the introduction. If anyone wants to go, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like we don't have any takers. So let's start with questions. Chaitanya, lower your hand for now and we can start with the questions, and I'll help you out with whatever I know and I've been experimenting with so far. Who wants to go first? Please raise your hand. Okay, Saurya, let's begin.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've covered this, but I wanted to like know more about your journey, like where you started, and so a bit of background regarding that.
Sure. Without boring others, I will say it in 1 minute. Then beyond the extended talk, once the questions are done, we can do that again. So I got my master's in electrical engineering. So mostly signal processing, image processing back in 2011. So 7 to 11, I studied from BITS Goa. Then immediately I went for master's, Arizona State University, 2011 to 13. After that, I worked in Silicon Valley for about 6 years. One was a startup. I was first employee, and the second was a big company. I was in the computer vision division again. And up until 2018, I didn't have much experience with NLP, up until 2019, actually. But during this time, I also got more onto learning online, because the self-driving car and other things were taking off. So I learned quite a lot of things from Udacity, Nano Degrees, and Coursera, things like that. And 2018, I moved back to India because I had a few ideas in mind that I could execute. And in that process, got accepted into this accelerator called Entrepreneur First. So I stayed in Singapore for about a year and a half, ideated on multiple things, and we got pre-seed fund from Singapore Accelerator to start a company, which is similar to Question, what I do currently. And what happened was early 2020, we had co-founder conflict. So unfortunately, we had to close down the company, although we were raising our seed round. And since then, I moved back. So it's been almost 2 years. And what I did was to take a blended approach, which is instead of doing startups full time, now that I got married then and now I have kid, I wanted to take a more safer road, which is have sustainable income through AI consulting, then do these experiments on the side, micro SaaS experiments on the side. And that's how I started with Question, Super Meme, and also courses on Udemy were also kind of like passive income explorations. That's about me in short, but happy to explain more once we are done with the first round of questions. Awesome. Ram, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, Ram. There are two parts to my question, right? One is motivation. Yes, there is a passion for coding, passion for doing NLP, AI. That's all always exciting, and there is a passion that is given, right?
Yeah.
But motivation is an element which is usually not conflicting with passion, but it is important to keep the motivation high, right? So how do you, what sort of strategies do you use to keep your motivation high? First part of the question. The second part of the question is, how do you manage your time to be able to do all of this, right? Because when someone is paying a paid consulting, they are going to expect 100% of you, right? And similarly, I know I have kids. I know how demanding kids can be. So how do you manage? And you continuously post, release content on LinkedIn, right? And they're not shamble work, right? They're quality work. When you write, also obviously, I can see the quality of writing of at a master's level, for example, right? And how do you manage your time and also keep your motivation high? I mean, any insights?
Sure. So coming to the first part on motivation, right? So I think it's kind of cliche, but what I do is whatever entertainment I do, I combine that with the motivation element, in the sense that I watch only movies that I'm excited about, and although the movie spirit I imbibe into what I do, which is someone rising to the top. That's the baseline. If you take any hero or South Indian movies that came out, it's more about the underlying thing, right? And I kind of relate that back to what I do. And unlike what most people say, which is motivation doesn't really last, I had a different experience. I think just like going to the gym, you don't go one day and you do heavy workout and you don't come out with a six pack, right? Similarly, motivation is similar. What I mean by that is back in 2011, 13, I used to actively watch motivation speakers content. There was one guy called as Eric Thomas. It's not about, a lot of people call it cringe content, but let me take a step back. And it's more about just like gym training, right? You need to start your day with a positive mindset. And nowadays, what happened is that I don't actively watch motivational content, but that kind of over the years drives me and it's still there. So that's one aspect of it. And whatever entertainment that I do, it's actually clubbed into motivation, which is the movies that I watch. And there is only one thing that I would say that I won't advise to everyone, but it worked out that way, which is I haven't watched a TV series in life on Netflix or other. The simple thing that I look at it is I got to know about world more through other things. For example, there is a series called as Explained on Netflix. It's also a series, but it's not a fictional series. Rather, you get to know about how finances operate, how rich people operate, how money works and all these things, right? So I don't cautiously try to be a productivity junkie or something like that. I kind of somewhat hate that as well. But just if you build an ecosystem that is directly fueling, even the entertainment fuels what you do, that helps quite a lot. So that's on the motivational side of things. Second thing is you need to do what you like the most. And for some reason, like I like content creation the most because I used to write as a kid to local newspapers, etc. From there, I've lost touch. But suddenly in 2020, I started writing on LinkedIn, and I realized that rekindled passion of mine, right? So sometimes, I mean, every day I try to wake up and just, write something from my previous day or the last week, etc. So that kind of is an open blank canvas where I open and start writing. And to your question about how AI consulting doesn't come in between, is that I had one rule in the last 1.5 years. Don't give more than 20 hours per week for AI consulting. Once I capped that at 20 hours per week, because my aim is not to make money with consulting. So if I make survival or sometimes a little bit of surplus, that's good enough for me. So I capped at 20 hours, which means that I'm not working full time for anyone. So they don't really have any exclusive rights over what I post, what I do with my free time. If I'm a part-time freelancer to somebody, I'm just that. I might do multiple part-time freelancing and other things, right? And content creation, there's one thing that I do, which is whenever I'm watching movie or Netflix, or I'm just playing with a kid, an idea or a keyword strikes me. I mean, it might be a quotation or quote even, right? I just have Google Keep and I just note 1 or 2 words. Now I come back and it's like my rough sketch where I have 3 or 4 ideas stored as they come by. Then I sit down and expand on them uh, over time sometimes, or sometimes I am able to fill in everything in 10 minutes and I post. So one of the biggest thing that helped me was capping freelancing at 20 hours per week. Second thing was I actively worked on how to improve passive income. So at one point of time, I stopped taking consulting and I just explored what's the digital product space, what's the micro SaaS space. It's almost like you go to YouTube and binge watch what these people are saying and doing. And after a point of time, you'll find a rhythm or pattern and you are able to implement that to yourself. Yeah. Cool.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Maram, for that. Of course, I'll not bombard with questions. I have a few more, but I will come back to it. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Chaitanya, do you want to go ahead?
Hey, thanks, Ram. So I just have I have a couple of questions. The first one is, when is your next live teaching session on Maven? I think there's a wait list, or you're still to announce the dates yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So is that something that you've thought about, or?
Yeah. So fortunately for me, so far I have been busy with AI consulting. So that was one. But fortunately for the learners, one of the big AI consulting that I was doing, kind of it ends on next month 7th. So to your question, I was actually thinking, should I make like a non-Udemy course, but launch it on my own website? I just bought a domain yesterday. I'll learnnlp.academy. And I was thinking to put the same cohort-based course there as a content, I mean, as a course that you could take, watch at your own pace. So I was debating between that or taking the cohort-based course. But whatever be it, in the next less than 1 month, one of these two things will happen, which is either you get the cohort-based course or you have the recorded course. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So my second question is probably I'm not sure how relevant it is to a lot of people, but so do you have? So I was just I'm at a very beginning stages of trying to figure out what trying to figure out AI, what NLP is, and what I can use with my products and things like that, right? So do you have some sort of I wouldn't say a checklist, but some sort of a checklist or some sort of a path which somebody who's starting out very early could follow to get to a certain stage where they can start developing products. So in terms of what they could learn or how they could go about doing things.
Got it. Okay. So actually, 1 year back, I gave a talk to a startup accelerator about, for non-technical folks, about what AI is and other things. So what's AI, NLP, computer vision, etc. So the short answer is I have a 30-minute course, but I won't sell it. Just ping me, whoever is on here, just ping me on LinkedIn or write to ramsri@question.ai. I'll give out the course for free. So it's a for non-technical people, or even for product managers, or even if you have decent just beginning experience. In 35 minutes or so, you'll understand a comprehensive overview of NLP, computer vision, AI training, and other these general terms. Then Chaitanya, to answer your question deeper, so part one is you have this NLP or AI or something like that. Part two is you are able to build an API from it. That means you pass in some text and summarization happens or something like that. Then part three is if you start from an API, how to build a product. And for that, from API to NLP SaaS, I have a 1.5 hour free video on YouTube that I've created. And if you just watch it diligently, you will understand exactly how I built question even. So just anyone on this list, if you want to know, just ping me. I'll give out the course for free, as well as link to the video, YouTube video that I was talking about.
Thanks, Ram. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Hey, Sai, so sorry to interrupt. I know there are a whole bunch of people,
Sure.
waiting to ask questions, but I think this is slightly an extension of what Chaitanya just asked.
Sure.
So I think I just want to take a step back and kind of ask, I don't know, maybe it's a bias from my role as a product manager, but why did you choose, question.ai? Probably you had a list of maybe 50 or 100 other ideas, and you might have chosen this. So maybe if you could just give us a glimpse of, how you went about doing that, that would be fantastic. And again, I think you decided to solve it using AI. I think it would have come more in the solution phase, but first I think you would have selected which problem to go after, right? So yeah, that'll be great if you could, tell a bit about that.
Sure. So very interestingly, I took two different paths for the two SaaS that I built. For example, let's come to question.ai. Question.ai was almost like a very low stakes experiment that I built over time. I'll tell you how. First, the other thing that I want to mention to all the folks who are here, always don't start broad. What I mean by that is you are learning ML or you're learning NLP, right? Don't just start learning NLP too broadly. Instead, map domain to NLP. You'll have better chances of learning as well as getting job or starting a company. For example, start with NLP in financial domain or NLP in medical, healthcare. I chose NLP in EdTech, and I was automating the assessments process in EdTech. And the low stakes experiment that I did was, of course, the backstory. There is some backstory, which is the company that we previously got funded in Singapore was kind of doing similar things, and we did some exploration there. I'll come to that later. But beyond that, what I did was I started writing on Medium at the intersection of NLP and EdTech, how you can automate assessments, things like that. So one domain, that is EdTech, and again within AI subdomain. So two subdomains combined, NLP meets EdTech. I started writing. As I started writing, I grew a little bit of audience both on LinkedIn and Medium. Then what I did was, over time, whatever algorithms that I explored, with the help of interns, I put together a GitHub library. It's an open source library. Anyone can just pass in text and generate some questions. So again, beyond blogging, an open source library. Then as that started gaining a little bit of momentum, and again, last year, January, one of my other consulting projects finished. And then I was thinking, trying to do my first ever course. And I thought, why don't I do it on question generation, since I have knowledge? So from blogs to open source library, I created a course on Udemy. And so far it stands at almost $7,000. And all these low stakes experiment gave me confidence that, okay, if people were reading blog, maybe 5,000 views a month, and they saw the GitHub library and then the course, why don't I go with SaaS as well for the same? And there is a beautiful thing that happened because I have blogs, GitHub library, course already out in the world. It's almost like at the end of everything, I linked back to my SaaS once I built it, which simply means I have built SEO even before the company existed, even before the question existed. So if I was driving 5,000 views a month to a blog post, now all I did was to add that I launched a SaaS as well. Whatever conversions happen through that happens, right? So these are low stakes experiments that I did. And coming to the SaaS part, the reason why I waited so long on to create the SaaS was that I didn't know how to do full stack development. And as an AI consultant, I didn't want to pay, let's say, $1,000 to an intern and try to build a website because I've done it multiple times that I don't want to, squander money or waste money at this point of time, rather take slower bets. But luckily I came across bubble.io. And to be honest, it does have quite a lot of learning curve. I started once in March last year and I gave up after like 10 hours of work. Then, like I said, motivation, right? One day I opened Twitter. There was one woman from US or something. She sold a GPT-3 based app for $5,000. And the app, when I opened, I was shell shocked, which is there is just input text. There is an output text box, almost as simple as a Streamlit, basic Streamlit demo that you can do or something like that. Then I realized, okay, she sold for $5,000. She built on Bubble, and it's an input text box and output text box. That's it. If she could do it for $5,000, there is no way that I have so much growth on GitHub and other things, and I am unable to do this. So again, I went back to Bubble. This time I bought one course on Udemy and I started doing seriously. My logic always is, see, when I moved back from US to India, driving in Hyderabad looked chaotic. That means there were like people coming from all around. I realized, I thought, how could someone do it? But then again, if you just take one level above, you know that there are thousands of Uber drivers and everyday commuting, right? So it's not rocket science. Maybe you have that initial bump that you need to go through. After that, it becomes a slide. So similarly, I had all these motivational points, and that Twitter post is, I don't remember who it is, but I need to attribute her. One day I opened, she sold for $5,000 and it was pretty simple input and output text box. I was like, there is no way I'm unable to build a SaaS. I learned Bubble in the next 3 weeks, launched with just multiple choice questions. And I didn't even know how to do subscriptions at that point. So with Stripe, I just did pay-per-use model. You pay $10 and you will get something called as 100 credits. It's almost like in code, someone paid $10, increase the runs from X to X plus 100. That's the simple thing that I implemented. And over time, slowly I started learning SEO. I learned about subscriptions. It's almost like I have some SaaS on the side, and every learning that I'm doing about email marketing, everything I'm testing out on that. It's like a test bed that's out there. And finally, like I launched subscriptions and other things. And finally, it's like a proper SaaS at the moment with landing page and everything.
Understood.
Just to finish off, I took a completely different approach for supermeme.ai. So supermeme.ai, within 5 months of launch, we have 10,000 users. And this time, again, why I'm showing these two contrasts is that there is that low stakes path with a solo developer that I took. Then with supermeme.ai, from the start itself, I teamed up with 2 other random strangers I met on the internet, one from Twitter, one from LinkedIn. I pitched them the idea that, see, there are companies like copy.ai that can take in text now and use some GPT-3 magic, and they are generating 1 million annual recurring revenue.
Yeah.
So take the same base model and do for other things. Maybe memes could be generated with AI. So I quickly tried something and it was decent. So before even building the MVP, I told that this is the baseline idea that I'm pitching you. We can generate memes with AI, and all of them were on board, and we started building, and in just 3 weeks we launched our first MVP, and currently we are almost at we were product hunt #1. So it's a proper idea, little bit of market validation. And one thing to tell you is that I did not collaborate with another developer. I am an AI developer. Now, in order for this to grow, I need a professional memer who will be the business person.
Okay.
And on LinkedIn, I saw Sanjeev. He's the founder of supermeme.ai. He had viral memes on product management, both on Twitter and LinkedIn. Then I told him, see, I don't want to execute it alone. And I know that the value of unexecuted brilliant idea is 0. I know that from experience. An idea, no matter how brilliant it is, if it's not executed, absolutely $0. So I thought, let's all be equal stakes co-founders. And again, for full stack, I didn't want to again go with bubble and other things because I need to do that, right? I'm an AI developer. Let's find a full stack guy. Similarly, we found a full stack guy. And yeah, that's two contrasts. Question.ai is slow solo development and currently at $500 or $600 MRR. And the other thing, supermeme.ai is kind of your traditional idea growth, multiple co-founders space. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, that's clear. Yeah, I also happened to meet Sanjeev sometime, on some other meeting. So yeah, got it clear. Thanks.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, I'll go next.
Sure. James.
I want to know, how did you sign up for creating courses on Udemy? I am really passionate about teaching. I have been teaching on the side, but I want to formally offer a course. It could be any part of machine learning. It need not be specifically NLP. I am okay with vision. I'm okay with just like general machine learning for finance. Like you said, it should be for like you need to pick some some subfield apart from machine learning. So if it's mostly for medicine, and like you have general machine learning, you can do vision, you can do regular things. So how do you there are so many already out there. How do you stand out, and how do you create such course? And what are Udemy is not just one thing, right? There's so many other websites, so many other places where you can do that.
Okay, good question. So the way I look at it is 2 ways. One, you have an audience, then people are willing to learn anything that you teach, even ABCD. What I mean by that is, yesterday I saw a video, learn basic HTML and CSS, was released 1 week back, and it has almost 100K views. So as of today, HTML, CSS would be redundant, but still it has 100K views, simply because the teacher already has audience. So there is a style of teaching and confidence that is associated from the previous students. And then whatever he or she teaches, they are willing to learn. That's for people with an audience. Even if you can teach generic with your persona style, people are willing to learn. Now take the second part, which might be applicable for most. For example, if you see question, there's a lot of there are a lot of getting started with NLP courses and other things, but none domain specific. And secondly, it's just that when I explored for 6 months or 1 year, I know that whenever I Google something, this is not found. So I had to implement a custom solution myself, or I had to put together 2 or 3 algorithms to solve this problem. So there is a soft evidence that in the research process that you are doing in the last 6 months, you know that things don't exist online. So you had to come up with yourself or put together a pipeline of algorithms yourself. So whenever you have accumulated such knowledge, that is good enough for you to go and offer it to the world. What I mean by that is, at least try to put in 3 months or 6 months of work that could come from your experience. For example, if you're a PhD and you worked on graph neural networks, you are perfect to teach about graph neural networks, right? So you should pick, not just, I would say, not everything needs to be combined with a domain, but even if you have specific knowledge in something, for example, just GANs or graph neural networks, or just, for example, I am thinking to launch a course on OpenAI GPT-3 because I worked on building products in GPT-3 for 6 months, and I know that what are missing, right? Because I Google something, it's not found, I know that I can do it. So I want to put together all of these things in a course. Similarly, any course that you make, if you don't have an audience, should come from some research experience, not necessarily research, it could be just independent exploration. As a developer or researcher, you can put together the course. Now, coming to the second aspect of where to put the course, if you're a first timer who don't have an audience, I recommend platforms with distribution. What that means is that on Udemy, you put a course and you're able to get 10 or 15 enrollments, etc. Then beyond that, people will search, because Udemy itself has, let's say, 5 million learners or something like that, right? So there's already a distribution network built. If you're able to offer value, then that will go through. But here's a catch. You cannot really sell your course beyond $35 on Udemy. I'll tell you from my personal experience. I saw whether you can keep the course for $5. What's the monthly income that you can get without by raising the prices without compromising on your total monthly volume. And beyond $35, so currently my course, I have kept it as $35. If I raise anything about $35 to $44, people won't buy it, or maybe 2 or 3 people buy in a month. And $35 is the ideal price point. What I'm trying to basically say is that you cannot put a really high priced course on Udemy, because people are psychologically used to buying courses at $5, at offers, sale, things like that. If you're planning for a high-end course, don't choose Udemy. $20 to $30 is ideal price range for Udemy if you want to hit. Secondly, there is Teachable, Thinkific, and other platforms like this, Podia, etc. If you have your own website, for example, ramsey.ai/learnnlp, or I just have learnnlp.academy, then I can put the course there at $149 or $299, etc. Then I drive traffic through SEO or Google Ads or even through my personal audience. I can sell it at that price, not at Udemy, because I can brand it more like a premium price that sits on my own website. I have branding for myself, things like that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
All right. Yeah, it answers my question. Thank you so much. Also, I want to know if, like, do you need to, so there is a difference between, so how long are your courses? I have not taken any of your course. So like what is the length of the course and how do you structure them? Do you have I have done some Coursera courses some time ago, which these universities offer. They're usually, they're ranging from 4 weeks to 8 weeks to 12 weeks. They have medium deliverables to too many deliverables, too many weekly assignments. So how do you structure them? And is there any rule of thumb you need to follow? Like a course must minimum satisfy these many things, these many check boxes or something, and anything on that note?
Correct. Jayant, let's do one thing. Since we have other folks waiting, let's get to this question in a bit. Is that okay for you?
It's totally fine. Totally fine. No worries.
Sure. Rohan, do you want to go ahead?
Hey, hi. I just wanted to, is there a possibility that you would go a bit detail into the technological aspect of the deployment process? Like you said that earlier with Question.ai, you were more into using the no-code tech stack, mainly Bubble.
Right.
But
Right.
this time you went in with a full stack developer, like your team of three has one meme person, you as an AI person, and a third one as a full stack developer.
Right.
So the first part is, could you tell me a bit about the deployment infrastructure, like infrastructure and the tech stack you guys are using? And number two, what are the costs that you primary costs, mainly the GPU usage and AWS costs that you guys are facing?
Okay. So there are two parts to the tech stack. One is the full stack development part. Second is the AI tech stack. So let's quickly talk about full stack development part as well. So basically you need a front end, you need backend. Backend means databases, storage and other things, right? So simply we are using something called as Supabase for backend. That's kind of, you can think of it's like Firebase, like Google, where a lot of things are handled by themselves. And so backend is Supabase, and you can also deploy on AWS the same similar backend using infrastructure. And for the front end part, you need technologies like React and libraries built on top of the Next.js and other things, right? So we are using Next.js, React, and deploying it on Vercel, and Supabase is the backend. That's for the technical aspects. I don't think folks are very interested in that unless they are front-end developers, right? Now, what happens is that behind the scenes, for me as an AI developer, all I do is create APIs. And apart from creating APIs, I don't do any other coding or backend stuff. I get an API, for example, let's say it's a summarization API, pass in some text to this URL, and I return summarized text. That's it. That's the only thing that I give to my front-end developer, and whatever UI UX that he builds and calls, it's all his problem. Now, when it comes to deployment of those models, there are few things that you need to take care of. For example, most of the times try to do it serverlessly. What I mean by that is I use AWS Lambda for all the APIs. And here's a catch. AWS Lambda by itself doesn't do the job, because sometimes you need to store little things in DynamoDB, that's like AWS storage engine, and you need to have API integrated. So you need API gateway. What simply means is that at the minimum, you need API gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB. And the easiest way to do this is you can use something called as AWS SAM, AWS serverless architecture, something like that. Basically, in the command line itself, you can start with a starter template, and you can just deploy from the command line. You can test it locally and then deploy on the Lambda. Everything without you going onto the AWS console, everything, all the API endpoint, the Lambda function, and DynamoDB integration, everything is taken care by just starting with a starter template. So what I do is, if I have any new algorithm, for example, I am talking, these things can only be done for serverless things, even behind the scenes. What I mean by that is, for example, you have GPT-3 based prompt. You call something to the GPT-3 API and it returns something. But you need to do a lot of post-processing and pre-processing. So I package that into Lambda. Within that Lambda, I call the GPT-3 API and use it. Now, there is a catch where if you have trained your own model, then you cannot host it on serverless manner if it requires GPU inference, right? For that, what I'm using is I'm using companies like slay.io, slai.io, and banana.dev. Basically, what happens is that they deploy your GPU or model or algorithm serverlessly. Now here, the biggest thing is that when it's GPU serverless, the first time your algorithm is called, there is almost 5 to 7 seconds of cold start. But that's kind of acceptable if you have 5-second cold start and 5 more seconds of computation that you do, then you return back. That should be okay for a production app. That's what I'm doing. So simply put, all the APIs are Lambda APIs itself. And if something could be done completely within Lambda, what I mean by that is if you have simple things like NLTK spacey, I package them within the Lambda as zip. But if that Lambda needs to talk to another computationally heavy GPU service, again that Lambda calls another API from slay.io or some other company that I deployed, and it returns from there. And for search and other things, I'm using Pinecone. Sorry, let me mute. Yeah. So for search, I'm using Pinecone because Pinecone provides one free instance and you can put up to 1 million documents. What that simply means is that you can build a very sophisticated semantic search algorithm by using Pinecone as the vector database, and you're operating on Lambda. And one more catch, every time when someone types in some key phrase or something like that, you need to convert that into a vector. Again, what I do is I deploy on Lambda, but now not as a zip file, but rather as a Dockerized container on Lambda. And there is one small catch to it. Every time when you deploy it as Dockerized on Lambda, you need to also give provisioned concurrency. Otherwise, you will get cold start of 10 seconds, etc. If you give provision concurrency, maybe it will cost you $30 or $40 minimum per month, but still it is affordable for you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Like it covers all the doubts that I had.
Awesome.
So basically, just to chime in, I'm building Model Card AI, which is a marketplace for pre-trained ML models. As you said that earlier in your first startup, you faced this friction, like you had that model, but to get to a level where you could get people to use that model as a service, the friction was very high. So I'm trying to eliminate that problem by letting people put directly their models into the website and then directly building the GUI part around it so that people can use it. So yeah, it covers all my doubts. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great. Pratik, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Ram, for having this conversation.
Absolutely.
My question is about the conversational domain of NLP and AI in general. So if someone wants to build a startup or a micro SaaS in conversational domain, how should one go about it? I would love to hear your take on this.
Okay. So one full disclaimer is that I have not worked actively on conversational AI to begin with, just saying honestly. Second part is that I don't personally think it's a good pathway to start conversational AI startup at this point of time. Of course, if you're doing something revolutionary, that's great. But what I would try to say in general is that you always need to leverage on something that is going to grow or is on the hyper growth path. Simply, if you ask me today, building semantic search systems or GPT-3 based prompt based systems, these two are on the hyper growth. And if you want to really leverage on this, you need to bank on hyper growth things that are currently happening in the ecosystem and build. And when it comes to conversational AI, the only thing is that there are already quite a lot of established players and it's an explored phase. Not that you won't be able to do something revolutionary, but what I'm trying to say is that think about adding some element of new magic to it. By that I mean, for example, in conversational AI, there are a lot of times there are auxiliary tasks that you need to do. For example, splitting compound sentence into simple sentences so that you can use those two as two different subtasks that you can delegate to, or identifying complex intents and other things. So you can build a layer on top of conversational AI that will provide APIs, specifically NLP APIs that are suited for that address most of the needs for conversational AI. That's something that you can do. But in general, the point that I'm trying to make is that every new technology subdomain has a monetizable window, and you need to latch onto that, and you can get the highest growth only during that phase. So trade carefully. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, Sai.
Yeah, hi Ram.
Hi.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a bit of kind of tech you worked. So, I mean, you said you're working on semantic search, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a lot of players in the market, VB8 to Pinecone or Milvus, now Qtrent and all.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just, I mean, I know that you already worked on all of this differently, but I mean, what are the advantages or disadvantages, you find in all of this, and where to apply what kind of, in the market, especially when coming to long texts, long, like documents and all.
Right.
How do you handle semantic search in those cases? Maybe legal or any financial docs or any kind of longer texts. How do you handle these vectorizations and all?
Okay, great question again. I did come across quite a lot of complexities in this, and I think it's a good point to discuss. So first of all, there are several players in the semantic search space, which is few players sit at the core level of just doing vector databases very well. That is either Quadrant or Pinecone or VB8. These do vector databases and they build their architecture to do CRUD operations very well. That means they don't really provide a lot of infrastructure for long text documents, or if you have domain based, you want to extract intent and other things on top of that. They don't really, splitting documents, even a lot of them don't really provide, or even question answering, FAQ generation. So what I meant to say is that search as such, vector databases doesn't really solve the full fundamental problem of building search. So what happens is that once the vector database level is crossed, then you have players that come in the adapter level where they provide framework for things like this. For example, Haystack, Gina.ai, all these things provide more like a framework that sits on top of vector databases. And beyond that level, you have fully managed things that are trying to provide. So coming to your question, the biggest thing is that not all vector databases are made equal. Similarly, there are quite a lot of problems. For example, if you think about VB8, VB8 is completely based on GraphQL. So if it's not easily, there's a little bit of learning curve. And if, let's say, a general student developer goes on to VB8 documentation, they will fear the documentation because it's GraphQL structured. So they don't know how to get started immediately. So there's a little bit of resistance. And I think in general, GraphQL versus REST, there is a debate, right? And I think that still exists with VB8. And I personally don't use VB8 simply because I think it's a little too complex. It's not that I cannot learn that complexity. The point is, if someone like Pinecone is even making it easier, where it's just a REST API, and oftentimes, unless I am building a seriously heavy, complicated architecture, I don't need so many fine-tuning things and high learning curve to do that. Whereas Pinecone offers quite easy to use API, right? So I'm just giving contrast. But again, the problem happens is that when it comes to Pinecone, it just stores vectors. What I mean by that is, if you have input query, again, you need to convert that into vector with your own AI deployed model, sentence BERT or something like that. That means you need to have an API that will do that business for you. So for example, for a developer, again, that is a managed resource that I need to do, right? So complexities kick in again. Whereas when it comes to VB8, the pros are that some things like question answering and other modules are already given by them, where you need to just pass in text. You don't need to convert it into a vector embedding. So similarly, and the honest thing is that really vector databases and semantic search doesn't really solve the problem, the whole problem. For example, if you have an Elasticsearch where you do some search query, there are quite a lot of things. that means you need to combine two things, do some weightage of other things, or for something like an image, right? I need to store two vectors. I need to know the caption of that image, and I need to store the actual vector that corresponds to the computer vision part of that image. So what I would say is that none of these support those kind of, multiple storages and other things, right? That you can use these vector databases and do some hacks. And again, when it comes to domain, for example, you have Zepto and all these companies, right? You go and search something. What happens is that first you need to do intent classification. By that I mean, if I type just eggs, buy eggs, or almond milk or something like that, then you need to first identify whether what I'm talking is groceries or I have something else, because there are quite a lot of disambiguated words, right? And at some point, vector databases, semantic search doesn't really cut the business for such e-commerce things, where you need quite a lot of customizations. You might want to, domain detection, intent detection. Beyond that, you want to separate the main noun phrase. For example, I type, 10 grams of moong dal, something like that. You need to just extract the noun phrase moong dal, then go to grocery section. Then you need to find 10 grams as the weight parameter that you give to your semantic search vector query parameters as well, right? You can filter parameters. So all these things, once I explore deeply, they are not really supported. And in short, depending on your use case and problem, you need to combine multiple things. For example, if you have long documents, at the moment, there is nothing, no single embedding that will embed the long document. And even if it does, it's not great. So what you would do is you would use haystack as the intermediary to convert it into multiple subdocuments. But the problem is that once you convert that into multiple subdocuments, you cannot really index that into Pinecone with a single index that's queryable. You need to create 4 or 5 _1 _2 _3 etc. subdocuments and then index it and their metadata, and then again you need to do second level of filtering. So from my experience, there's no solution that fits in like drag and drop. You need to combine multiple things depending on your use case. And I still think that there is space for one good player who will provide this end-to-end, which is even the vector embeddings and other things. Because if I'm an individual developer, again, if I need to host an API to convert my text into a vector and do that scalably, that's hard for me. If Pinecone had already done that, that would have been easier for me. I would even pay for that probably.
Yeah. Thanks, Ram. So, I mean, Pinecone is like mostly suggestible. As per, we can customize our own models, I feel, as you say.
So, I mean, coming from other perspective as well, right? So what I thought was that Pinecone has the best SEO presence or content presence online of all the vector databases. All the vector databases are treating as if like vector databases is a developer thing and you need to just do that. Whereas I think Pinecone's approach was more on, let us educate what vector databases are, then teach about what you can do with vector databases and do that as well, right? So I thought that approach was, more SEO friendly and as well as, developer friendly, where you show the use cases before throwing the vector database right away.
And also how proven is results with respect to semantic search with Pinecone, or because mostly comparatively people still don't adapt to this so easily. I mean, what is your experience in working with these kind of vectors results?
So 90% of the heavy lifting is done by the sentence vector embedding that we use. It has got less to do with Pinecone, but more to do with what sentence SBERT sentence transform model that we use. That's there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I've experimented with GPT-3 embeddings, but it was extremely bad. So I would totally avoid GPT-3 embeddings, at least at this point of time. Just go to sbert.net and whatever is the best available model, use that. Or if you have domain specific data, you can do something called as GPL training, generative pseudo label training, that came out in the last 1.5 months, etc. I tried that out, and the results are good. You can do domain adaptation and train your own vector embeddings for your own custom domain. Yeah.
So SBERT is kind of, I mean, you fine tune SBERT kind of with the domains.
Yeah,
or
you fine tune SBERT starting from one SBERT model. You fine tune it. Yes.
Also, one last question. So, what is your kind of vision of NLP? In next coming 5 years, where would this kind of use cases grow till? What kind of use case can be expected in the market with respect to the current NLP things going on? And where would you see that?
So, from a product builder perspective, right? I have less and less interest now to go and train a model from scratch. If I can fine tune a GPT-3 model in $10 with 500 samples. So there's a paradigm shift in how I operated even. Why? Because previously, if I was training a text generation model using T5, I need to collect at least like 10,000 to 50,000 samples and train a perfect model. That's too exhaustive for me, which I cannot afford. Sometimes I might get the data, sometimes I don't. Rather, and also the biggest problem is that I need to deploy the T5 transform model myself. Now, instead, what GPT-3 did was, I have nothing against paid solutions as long as they solve the problem. So all the things about not open source, etc., they are talked by purists who are there. But if you really use GPT-3 as a product, you know that they deliver the value for the money that you give. So in $10, I can annotate 500 samples. I can train a model in $10 or $15. I can put that into production without thinking about infrastructure costs or nothing like that. So that is a very big paradigm shift for me to be able to, iterate fastly, deploy easily with less training data, not worry about the costs. Beyond that, there is prompt engineering. So what happens is that if you are training model to do something generative, now if you could just pass in a prompt and that GPT-3 can do the same, that's a huge heavy lifting, right? So what that simply means is that going further, unless I have extremely domain specific tasks where GPT-3 isn't cutting on the quality level that I want, I don't usually think about going back and training at the moment. So for new NLP engineers, what I suggest is that take a blended approach where you master GPT-3 and prompt-based engineering, not just with GPT-3, but even further beyond the models that are coming up. Secondly, multimodal AI is what I believe will take off, in the sense that right now DALL-E is just images, GPT-3 is just text. But what happens if you combine multimodal AI, where automatically for a given text, for a given blog post, it can generate an image that is suitable, things like that. So I do think that GPT-3 will become GPT-4 for sure with higher quality of data. And the biggest thing is that GPT-3 doesn't really perform well for multiple languages. So beyond top languages like English, Spanish, rest of them are really bad. So there is a unicorn, not even a unicorn, decacorn or even 100 unicorn waiting to be that large language model that is multilingual for all languages. Whoever builds that will take the lion's share in building that multiple decacorn company. Yeah.
Great. It was a good insight, Ramsey. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. Go ahead, Kashish. Looks like he cannot hear us. Go ahead, Ram.
Sure. Ram, a couple of clarifications from me, right? So you mentioned about SuperMeme being a full stack development and Bull.io for your question gen, right? It's an interesting contrast, right? So the full stack development React, it's a box standard full stack development ecosystem, and is that decision because you wanted to focus your time elsewhere, or I just thought I will understand the rationalizing, right? Because that's one of the most difficult thing for a developer to do, not build. make it be done by someone else, right?
Right.
Some insights on that
Absolutely.
decision.
Great question. I think I mean, I have thought of this subconsciously, but now that you asked it, now I can frame it more, validated on my end as well. So there is one thing that I always believe, which is work on abstractions for the most part by picking a core. That is the only way where you can get the highest ROI. For example, there are a lot of full stack developers and a lot of people who can build backend. I mean, if you go to YouTube, you know that HTML, CSS, or React will have 1 million plus views, which means similarly, there are learners like that, right? So if you really want to build a company that makes a delta, which means both monetary wise or impact wise, if you really want to do, it's not about doing everything decently. It's about doing one thing like T-shaped skill. I can do question generation or text generation models, and I know only handful of people are qualified or experienced to do it that well. I pick a core. That's my core. That means tomorrow question succeeds. It's not like another developer sees that and just blindly copies that. For example, if I build a grocery delivery app, today I'm doing very well. Tomorrow also I'm doing very well. Day after tomorrow, in front of me, there is another Blinkit or Don't Blinkit, some other company will come and take the lion's share of it. How can you build a moat for yourself? One way is if you have independent knowledge that could come from a PhD or that could come from personal exploration, and domain knowledge is also some kind of moat. For example, if I have, let's say, a great friend who is into some medical healthcare space, he knows exactly the problems that people face in the medical text reading. I'm an AI developer. I can combine with them and I can go and execute something with a moat. So always, as a solo developer, if I'm operating on a moat, my moat is text generation or AI, NLP, text generation in NLP. Now I need to operate on abstractions for everything else. Otherwise, there is no way I can scale. There is no way I can devote enough time and bring it to fruition as a solo developer. Now, Question and supermeme.ai, they come from two different school of thoughts. I'll tell you why. Question is kind of a solo developer project, and I kept it intentionally like that because my ultimate goal with Question is to, kind of have an exit set, maybe like $1 or $2 million or $5 million exit. And I am trying to find the shortest pathway to do that beyond the passion part. I mean, that's the best thing that can happen to me. So I am making it as a solo developer to make it to a decent MRR, and I exit as a solo developer. That's the pathway for it. Whereas when it comes to Supermeme, it's more like, it's built to be that virality company. So it's not built to be operated by a solo developer. I need a team. And in order to compete in that marketing space altogether, perhaps we could raise VC funding in the future as well, if things work out well. And so it is out and out, cut out to be a commercial entertainer, if you want to call like a South Indian movie, right? Or any Indian Bollywood movie. It's meant to be a commercial entertainer. So the budget, the target audience is like that. Whereas Question is more like a artistic film. Maybe it will get national award. Apart from that, no one notices or it doesn't make any revenue. It's like an indie thing. So for me, Question is perfect. As a solo developer, I can build and I can sell it for 1 or 3 million. Whereas when it comes to Supermeme, the only problem is that as it is built to be a commercial thing, people will ask for quite a lot of things. I want teams to be there. I want these things to happen. So you will hit no code limitations soon. It needs to be a proper world-class full stack app that plays on React, etc., to leverage modern technologies or to execute at your comfort. That's why I let that be in that genre. Whereas this is more like in one day, if you give me, let's say $500,000, I can hand it over overnight without anybody's approval or without anybody's needs. I can just transfer things because everything is minimal, right? So it's built on two different philosophies.
That's a great insight, Ram. Thank you very much.
Awesome, awesome. Kashish, do we still have be here, or do you want to go ahead, Sabrish?
Yeah,
Hello.
yes, okay, good, Kashish.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Kashish. Sorry.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the session. It was great
Sure.
again. So I have this. So I have knowledge about ML and deep learning and all of that stuff, and I teach on the side one-on-one on like Zoom or something, right? So that is like an active income thing apart from my day job. That's
Right.
it. So what I want to do is productize it and create an online course, right? And I have a personal blog also that is hosted on Ghost, which is like a platform like WordPress, you can say, but it's better than WordPress. But yeah, so I want to host all my courses there. They have a subscription model also, so I can have native videos, everything that like a Teachable does. I can do it on that in a very cheap way. I've hosted that on DigitalOcean.
Right.
So now I have a limited audience on LinkedIn, like around 4,000-5,000. So how should I go about like creating that course? And the first course I'm thinking is like a math for ML thing, which is like a short, and I'm pretty confident about it, and I want to go. So like, how should I price it? How should I go about it? That's why.
Okay. Great question. So few things to keep in mind. One is your specific knowledge, Mac for ML, you want to create that course. Great. So few approaches are that one is you build in public. What that means is that whatever table of contents are there, you publish on LinkedIn and say that you're going to create the course. And if other people would like to see any other additions, please feel free to chip in. That's one. Second thing is that you need to incentivize early backers. What that simply means is that your final price could be $35 or $49, however it is. But give a single-digit dollar price for people who are early adopters. What that means is that once you announce the course launch, create an email list, and people can go and sign up at that email list. Just they give their email and that's it. And when you launch the course, or when you're about to launch the beta version, etc., you send out an email for them and you sell the course for, let's say, even $9 or something like that. So for the first 100 audience, don't aim big, but rather aim for that they are early adopters. So you need to incentivize them as you are building with them. So you'll give out for a lower cost. Now that has two repercussions because of it. One is that if you are launching on any platform, Udemy or something like that, with lower price tag itself, people will buy and they'll start giving reviews. So you'll have rating, comments, and other things. So the biggest thing that you can do of high leverage is for first 100 people or 200 people, you get in at whatever price that you want, even you're near and dear at free or something like that. Then you build some reputation, which is the course is rated at 4.5 stars and has 20 reviews or something like that. Now, for someone coming in and looking at the raised price tag of the course at $49, etc., it makes sense. Secondly, if your course is, let's say, 4 or 5 hours long, do multiple things. One is create a miniature version of that. Either it is part of the course or condensed version of it, giving like it's just like a trailer for the movie. The movie is 3 hours, but trailer is whatever 3 minutes. But you can assume your course is 4 hours, trailer is 40 minutes. And that 40 minutes, you can keep it on YouTube. Secondly, you can reach out to other YouTubers or any NLP meetups or AI companies, etc., and tell them that you will give a talk on this. It's a free talk. And in that, don't try to even hide anything. Just answer everything, give out your content, tell about that, and even give out some code bits. So all the Google Colab notebooks should be contained with themselves. So you build some brand reputation, right? Secondly, third thing is that whatever course content that you have, start writing on, let's say, LinkedIn or Twitter or Medium, snippets of that. By that I mean, take an end-to-end thing and try to write that. A lot of times people worry that, okay, if all my blog posts, if my course is present in, let's say, 90% of the course is in 10 blog posts, then why will they buy? The simple thing is that my best friend doesn't know that I've released one video. I need to remind him that there is a video that I did on bubble.io or something like that. People love organized content. They won't organize it for themselves. So even if you organize it for themselves in a nicely packaged course, that's good. Second thing is, since you're talking about deploying on your own website and other things like that, bank on SEO. What that means is that simply talk about, general stuff like top 10 chatbot companies, top 10 AI companies, or even talking about an algorithm, and build your blog. And at the end of the blog, there is a call to action, which is your course. And pricing wise, I would say for the initial start, stick to $1 launch. It could be 9.9, not $1, one digit, $9.99, etc. for the first 50 or 100 people. Then you can raise the course price. I would suggest maybe like $25, $24.99 is a good price point for Indian audience. If you want to really hit, you can go to $49, etc. once you have good reviews and other things. But beyond that, if you want to charge 99, 149, etc., I would say if you are able to attract more like European or US audience, then you might have more success. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask. So you said the price like $10, $25. That is like a one-time sell. I can sell the whole thing fully. Yeah. So my thing is on my platform, like I can give like subscription, like per month.
Correct.
So I can say $5 or $10 per month. So how does it equate? Like a $10 course, how does it equate to a subscription cost? Like
okay, got it. Actually, subscription and productizing is a good pathway if you're willing to invest time in it. What that simply means is that if you launch a course, whatever the course money that makes, that's about it. Recently, learn opencv.a or the popular OpenCV blog, I don't remember what, PyImage search. PyImage search, basically it's a course teaching thing by one guy called as Adrian. Of course, he hired a few people here and there, but basically he built a platform for everything computer vision, and he sold after 7 or 8 years for a 7-figure sum, which means, I don't know exact number, but it could be 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, or anything, something like that. So he built a community around that, which means there are learners who come in and actively take the courses, and he generated some yearly revenue. Now he has built a community because he has email list of all computer vision enthusiasts, maybe 20,000 or 50,000. He has sold multiple courses. So he has created a brand that itself is valued maybe like $2 or $3 million. So if he had just created a course on Udemy, he would never be able to sell it to a third-party person that way. So bank on creating community. What that means is that if you really want to make it big, everyone who takes the course, you send them a Slack invite link for the course, or if you have a general thing like AI by Kashish or something like that, you can invite to that. You build and foster a community there where you answer questions, things like that. And let's say if you have 5,000 members or 10,000 members in the community, that community itself has some direct monetizable value, maybe like $500,000 or $1 million in the VC world and outside world. Tomorrow you can just take the community or rebrand it, or you can launch a job portal for the community. So there are many things that you can do if you are willing to build the community. And with the subscriptions, I would say start with $4.99 or something like that for the first 50 people or something like that. The only thing is that with subscriptions, there is a catch. People expect newer content over time. What that means is that in 3 months time, you launch second course, and in 3 more months time, time you launch third course. So you need to add keeping courses, or you need to keep sending newsletters continuously. Otherwise, people feel there's no point in paying $5 monthly unless they have a recurring value. It could be new courses, or you have newsletters sent out, exclusive newsletter that's sent out. But the biggest thing is that if you can pull it off, you build a real company that can exit at $2 or $3 million, $5 million instead of just selling courses.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. What I meant was subscription for every course. So if they can complete in 2 months, they can exit after 2 months. If they want like 6 months for the same content, they can pay till 6 months. And I can have different subscription for different courses.
Got it. I would rather avoid that path because I haven't seen any successful model with that. Rather, you create a subscription for the whole platform. That's an ideal pathway, because then you can show it as monthly recurring revenue to VCs, or even if people talk about valuation, you can use that. Otherwise, I'm not really convinced about the just course subscription and timeline path.
Like in Coursera also, you have this monthly, you have to pay, right? Let's say 3,000 per month is the cost.
Coursera does have that, but more like for an individual, I don't see strong reasons to go for that. Maybe there is a path to explore and monetization opportunities are there, but gut feeling is that I am not convinced personally to execute that way. I'm just giving you my honest opinion.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks.
Sure. Go ahead, Saurya.
Yeah, thanks. So this was really insightful talk. So I have like a bunch of questions, but I think we're running out of time. So I'll stick to like 2 or 3. The first one is...
I promise to answer everyone's question, even if it is 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. So if you have more questions, just stay through once we go through the round. Yeah.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. First one is, as I keep working on more projects or even products, I find myself, taking care more of the engineering side, like, working on the, APIs or, the frameworks and all, and working on, reducing the error rate or the performance. That's all good. But in terms of time and resources, I haven't had the time to really go understand the theory well, because example, take transformers for NLP. I took an NLP course, I took a deep learning course, I took a speech recognition course, but still I was doing projects, assignments and all. I could get the job done, but if someone really grills me for more than like 4 or 5 follow-up questions, I'm not so confident right now. So is that an okay approach? Because I'm like, okay, let me learn more of the details of the theory later when I need it, because right now I'm getting the job done. Is that an all right approach? And the second question is, in terms of if I am, so for the speech projects I'm doing for Tamil and Telugu, I did a lot of pre-processing, and these are very like hands-on stuff, but I created scripts for them. So is it okay? I mean, is it viable to have like a free web app which, given a text and of a raw corpus, it outputs in the format that, for example, Kaldi uses or something? Could that be useful for the community and stuff? And the third one is, do you have like a list of NLP or speech communities like Discord or Slack or subreddits that you can share sometime? Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So the first question is that if you are into entrepreneurship and product building, I would never advise you to go deeply unless you are paid to do that. For example, if your manager wants you to implement a new model or do cutting edge research and you are getting paid 100K, go and do that. But otherwise, as a product builder, I would take the same approach that you're taking, which is, as long as the job is done, keep moving. Your point is to make it a consumer app with that model, not to increase 2 more points accuracy, things like that. So the simple thing to say is that I can go ahead and train quite a lot of T5 text generation models and build and other things, etc. I completely stayed away from that consciously. there is this question generation algorithm that can take in text and generate questions. It's okay-ish. That's good enough. If I am unable to monetize this and reach audience, a 5% better model would not cut it. Rather, if I got, the way I look at it is, I would get 100 customers with this model. If the model is 5% less accurate, I'll get 95 customers. But the other way is not true. You won't go from 0 to 100 customers if you increase 5% accuracy. So stay at the same level that you're at, which is don't delve deeper until necessary. And like I always think, if there is a real necessity for me, then I would go ahead and do it. But otherwise, there's no pointing in delving it deeper unless you're directly rewarded monetarily for that. So stick at that operation level itself, and that's perfect. And coming to the second question, can you just remind me? I think I missed
even I forgot. Let me see. So one of the question is like, I'm working on the speech recognition project for Tamil and Telugu. So the question that asked was like, when you get the raw data, the corpus or the transcripts, but still when you're using the framework, you have to give do some pre-processing to get there. So I was thinking like I have like good enough scripts already done so that I can rerun things and all. So is it viable to create a web app which kind of takes this a corpus to give out that output that Kaldi needs? So would that be something that would be useful for the community?
So from a product perspective, I don't see way to monetize, or I see that the target audience is very small. It could be just a GitHub library, or you have the demo for your brand building. Great, but I don't think there's big enough thing where people pay. So always you need to see the target addressable market that you can hit with this. So from that perspective, I don't see much.
I don't have hopes of monetizing, but I was just thinking like like an open source library. I think that's more well done because developers prefer that probably.
Sure. Just take that approach and use that as brand building for you, or give some talk on reprocessing, etc. But beyond that, I don't see much on that.
And the last question was about communities like Discord groups or Slacks, or these kind of resources for people who want to be more active in the NLP and speech domains.
So I think Pratik Bowser runs one NLP group, Max Pool. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's the good one that I'm in. Just type Max Pool NLP community, Pratik.
Okay, Substack.com.
So join that Slack group. I think that's one of the best ones that I know. Then Alexei Gregorov has a data engineering Slack group. Be part of that as well. Beyond these two, nothing that I can think of. There is one other way, which is you can join the Slack communities of either VV8 or Pinecone, these vector search engines, if you want to delve deeper. But beyond that, Maxpool and Alexei's data engineering, these two are the ones that I can think of.
Thanks, Ram. And one last follow-up question is, I mean, respect for all the experience that you had, and I really like the super meme. That was quite fun. I have experimented a bit, but kudos for you to launch it, because sometimes shipping it is most of the job done, right? So after that you can iterate. So like I understand you do consulting and all, but have you considered hosting like an officer a week, either free or paid, that people could drop in and maybe chat a bit? Have you ever considered doing that?
So I think direct monetization of time, usually what happens is that if enough people don't show up, it's not worth the time. So the thing with live sessions is that that's one of the problems. Second thing is that if I'm solely trying to make a living as a creator, that's a good avenue to explore, where just like I was mentioning the other person, right? So creating a community where you have $5 subscription for NLP, and I keep releasing video every month, or I have private talks, that does require time and commitment. And I do think there is a monetizable opportunity at the level of, let's say, 50K or 100K USD per year. But it requires effort, and I would have done it if I was a full-time creator. But if I'm trying to build SaaS apps and kind of make them as they exist, this is kind of like a too much effort, but ROI is not seen immediately. It will be effective in 6 months, 1 year, etc. So right now I'm not actively pursuing that. And these kind of things, whenever I get free, I can do these things ad hoc, right? Whenever someone pays you, they expect you to show up. That's why I don't run a paid newsletter as well, because every week you are expected to do something. And if you can't really take a week off or 2 weeks off confidently, you are losing that freedom, right? So that is the reason why I know that few people make a living on just Substack newsletter, paid newsletter with 100K USD, but I have not explored those because I know it's a recurring work that needs to happen. But always these kind of sessions ad hoc. I just informed less than 24 hours ago. I'm glad that so many people turned up, because sometimes you have this imposter syndrome. I mean, LinkedIn doesn't give you reach sometimes for the post, so maybe 2-3 people will show up, so all those things happen, right? But I'm glad, like, less than 24 hours notice, so many came. And for me, I'll tell you one thing honestly, which is creators directly look at the audience they have or the followers they have as monetizable, in the sense that one day I expect you to pay $50 for me, and I try to make a living out of that by providing that same thing to multiple people. But in my case, the approach is slightly different, not because I'm being generous or anything like that. It's just practical that I'm building SaaS. For me, if you know a VC very personally, and you make an intro that he's a great guy, you should fund him, that cuts my bill of whatever engagement that I have, whatever help that I do. If I was a creator, I would be expecting $50 from you at some point of time, which I think is fair enough as well. But for me, it's more like, even if someone is able to put a word of mouth out, or bridge that connection of where someone is, let's say someone is already spending $100,000 to create questions using an army of people, and you just put one word out that I know Ramsri and he's building question, that's a direct SaaS income for me, right? So for me, being in this trifecta, it's a different kind of monetization that I'm expecting. It's not direct monetization. It's just the social capital. If someone is able to give their social capital to me, that's enough for me.
Yeah, networking, right? Yeah. Thanks, Ram. Thanks for all the answers. So, your ventures projects kind of inspired me as well to take this SaaS approach more seriously, and increase my perception of, increased my belief in the viability of these kind of things. So right now I'm also kind of married and juggling with school and bunch of stuff, but I do want to work on something solid, at least for my own experience, and also take it to market in a similar way if time is kind for me. Yeah, really thanks for the talk. Yeah, thanks.
Wishing you all the best. Amazing to hear that. Always do low stakes experiment, in the sense that you launch something on the side, and then take it full time once it crosses a certain threshold.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ram.
Go ahead, Sabrish.
Hey Ram, just one question. So again, like, this is with respect to the problem space. So let's say I'm still in the process of skimming for ideas, and to probably build either using no code or something like that, and later distribute it to. What would be a good approach for that? If you could talk a bit about it.
One way is there are two ways to go about it. One, you find an existing app that is successful, you can embed AI with that. For example, I'll give you a free idea for now. There are these Typeform, etc. form submission apps that are making, $1 million revenue per year. Form submission, right? Like Google Forms, you have
Sure.
forms and all these things.
Yeah.
Right now, there are no NLP analytics built into that. For example, I have a job and 100 people applied for that, and you have description box, other things, right? What if I can do, semantic search through it, or I can create a dashboard that out of the 100 people applied, 50 people wrote and they are in one cluster and others are in other clusters, etc. Right? So I'm just throwing out idea in the sense that if you can add NLP, cutting edge NLP, not even cutting edge, even if 2 or 3 years behind state of the art, if you can add NLP to existing successful app and launch a new one, that's one way to think about it. And second direct way is to leverage on technology directly. For example, DALL-E came out, and soon in 1 year, DALL-E API will come out, which is you can give any text and it will generate some images or illustrations. If I had 100K in bank and I have nothing to do, what I would do? I would go on Behance, where illustrators, these image paintings and digital artists hang out. I will talk to them, paid or unpaid. I'll DM them and ask, hey, who are your clients? What kind of clients do you get? What are their requirements, etc. Tomorrow, once DALL-E comes in, I will just attack their clients either through SEO or direct pathway reaching out to them. Let's say if my clients are usually home designers who are looking for home decors, then I'll take DALL-E, I'll take architecture design of homes and other things. I'll combine these two and I'll fine tune DALL-E for architecture homes or generating different variations, walls, murals and other things for home decor. I'll build a multi-million-dollar company just in the home decor and DALL-E image generation space. I'm just giving an example. Similarly, I'll go on to Behance, talk to all these illustrators, etc. So 2 pathways. One is existing successful company, you add NLP and hyper accelerate it or make it a superpower. Second pathway is you find upcoming technologies like DALL-E or something like that. Just go and do a comprehensive search. Where are illustrations generated currently? On Behance, if you go and see where are these designers working? Who are these designers working for? What is their need? What's the prominent need for them? And if you see multiple patterns, that there is one big opportunity that I don't know, real estate people, somebody is looking for designs quite often and hire them. You can put DALL-E there and build a company there. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Great. Go ahead, Ram. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was going to talk about the content creation on LinkedIn, right, Ram? So, can you talk a bit about your videos? What sort of kit do you use? What audio? How do you filter audio? All of that, right? I mean, content creation is not easy, and if it is not your passion, it can drain your energy, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, can you talk a bit about it, please?
Sure. Yeah, those who are leaving, please do. I know it's a little extended, so feel free to take off if you have other things to do. I'll stay more to answer all the questions, but I won't feel bad. Feel free to leave if you have other things to do. Okay, great. So coming to content creation, Ram, just like building a SaaS, there are multiple things to model, multiple things to master. It's not just about writing text. I'll tell you what are the things that go into content creation. First is there is copywriting, because I can write question. If you go onto the landing page, question could be question generation using state-of-the-art natural language processing algorithms. That could be one title. Or create quizzes in 1 second using AI for teachers, for tutoring chains, for schools. This is copywriting. What I mean by that is you need to identify the target audience and speak their language and talk about value delivered, not what your product is. Basically, you need to sell a transformation, not what your product does, or it's not about GPT-3 based question generation algorithms, nothing like that. I help you create quizzes faster as a teacher. So one big thing is copywriting and content creation. Whatever you want to say, how do you say it? Here, simply put, you can write something like, this is my kid, put 100 likes for this post. No one will keep it, right? If you see my content, it's more about a journey, a struggle as a parent, or I'll explain about things that I'm going through. It's about, for me, there's a lot of inspiration from South Indian movies. If you see South Indian movies, there is a huge intro scene that is amazing. Those are called as thread starters or line starters, because LinkedIn only shows 2 or 3 lines in the beginning, not just LinkedIn, even Twitter. Only that hook is good, then people expand and read more. There should be an interval bang, and then at the end, there should be a clean finisher so that people walk out with some takeaway or feeling great about something, things like that, right? If you see most of my best performing posts, it's kind of like that. It starts off with a great hook, kind of like a curiosity driving thing. Then there's an interval bang, and at the end, there is usually a takeaway or a feel good thing. There need not always be a takeaway. If I make you feel good for the day, that for example, regular struggles of things are normal and we need to push through, that makes you positive for the day, right? So it could be all of these things. So copywriting is one big aspect. Second thing is actually illustrations that go with that. And I will tell that most people don't have an illustrator's eye, in the sense that on black background, they'll put blue text and things like that and post. First of all, you need to identify patterns that are pleasing to the eye. If you see my posts, there are 2 patterns that I follow. Either it is white background with blue text or black text, such that the contrast is good, or it is yellow background with black text, black and yellow. So I don't think it will come on day one, but if you, I use Canva, and how I use Canva is that every time I see a design, I just don't think that it's a nice design. I see what are the elements of it, what are the backgrounds, what are the clip arts that are used, how is the contrast, everything, right? Once you start seeing that pattern, you will realize how to make good ones. And for hand-drawn illustration kind of feel, I recently discovered Excalidraw. It's a very easy to use tool where it's almost like on an iPad, you draw something and write something. The visual is like that. It's almost like you have handwritten that thing on a digital thing with pen. So Excalidraw was not in my tool set until 1 month ago. But once I discovered it, I started using that to add illustrations to my posts. And for video editing, etc., I use Filmora, because like I mentioned, always work on abstractions. My goal is not to master Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects and compete with them. No, I take the least level of abstraction that's possible for me. It's Canva for designs, not Adobe Photoshop. It's Filmora for me, not Adobe Premiere Pro. Similarly, it's Excalidraw for me, not Figma or some other sketch or complex tool for design. So pick these things and operate. That's how I say. Yeah.
No, that's a great insight, Ram. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Been incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Go ahead, Harshit.
Yeah. Hi, Ram.
Hi.
So my question is that how do you evaluate or make an assessment whether AI should even be used for a particular problem or not. Okay, so let me elaborate on this. So we all know that AI is at the helm of like everything, right? So people with limited knowledge of AI think of it as a black box, right? So they think of it like you throw any kind of problem into it, and at the other end you will get a magical solution. Even in the industry, that is the case. Like we like talking from my own experience, we get like oftentimes we get a lot of vague requirements from the upper management. Okay, and it's the stipulation that you have to use some kind of machine learning or AI to make it look fancy or attractive when they are pitching it to clients or whatever, right? So how do you go about evaluating it, whether AI should even be used for this problem, or there could be a trivial solution from the standpoint of that whole needle and sword thing, right? And how do you explain it to the management, like that is my thought process, we can do with a alternate solution, not going through this way. So how do you go about it?
Got it. Okay. So one thing is that, as you mentioned, people who come from non-domain expertise of AI kind of think of it as a black box, and oftentimes their comparison is with human annotators, etc., and they're willing to, willing to not accept AI if it doesn't perform that level. That's definitely there always. The way I look at building AI products is that, is it boosting the productivity? What that means is simply, for example, take question. If I give you 2 paragraphs and I ask you to create 3 multiple choice questions, you will take about maybe like 20 minutes or 15 minutes, because you need to read through the paragraph, you need to see where you can frame question. Now, once you frame the question, you need to come up with distractors, that is the wrong answer choices for that, and right. And if you're thinking about a higher order thinking questions, again, you need to read through and come up with something in like 10 or 15 minutes, right? So that's the baseline. So either if AI is not performing up to the humans, is it fastening the process? Is it making it operate at scale with minimal resources? And sometimes even when I build a model and it might generate out of 10 questions, if I'm generating 5, like only 1 or 2 good questions, still it is not reducing the time, right? Only if I hit 7 or 8 good questions that you can directly use, then you're reducing the process. So always don't compare AI with directly can it do a human task, but rather think about it more like, if a human takes X minutes to do it, can you cut the time into X by 10, but still provide the same productivity? What does that mean? Maybe if some job takes 10 minutes, in 1 minute, you generate a copy and the human can edit or do minor changes in 2 or 3 minutes and post it. Then you're cutting down the effective time from 10 minutes to 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And coming to the second point of whether you think about AI solutions or not, the answer is that I always operate in domains or validate a problem only where AI can come in and play, because I want to create a moat. What that means is that if I know that there is grocery delivery need and I can build an app, I won't go and do that, simply because if some other full stack developer is better suited to do that, there is no moat for me to operate. So I always choose AI problems to operate in, and the validation that I do is twofold. One part is I talk with the stakeholders, that is the domain experts, to see, hey, I'm generating these questions or I'm creating these memes automatically. Are they even funny that you can share maybe 2 memes out of 10 or 3 memes out of 10? And if you want to think creatively, probably you need to go into a blank room and think about funny things and templates and other things. Maybe it's a 1 hour process to come up with good memes. Can I fasten it in like 10 minutes where you can play with this, etc.? So first part is that you do internal validation. Second part validating is that the domain experts say that it will ease the time for them. If it's not cutting the bar, where sometimes it does happen genuinely if the AI model is not perfect, then we need to, give up that idea at that point of time or wait for models to become better. What I mean by that is, in 2018 itself, I presented AI Artist, which is what DALL-E 2 is currently. But at that point with GANs, whatever I could generate and things that I could do, that doesn't cut the bill. That means whatever image that I generate, they cannot post it online the same way an Illustrator generated image would. So although the idea was there, AI didn't cut the bill, so I left that at that point of time. Today, DALL-E can compete with humans and actually fasten the process, and you can make minor edits to DALL-E images. So it's become a productivity thing, right? So the same idea with the tech back in 28, it doesn't fit the bill to be a product, and today it does. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks. I do have a second question also, totally unrelated to this. So
Sure.
I'm sure back in your like corporate days, you must have developed the habit of reading and going through research papers and all, be it your personal habit or a requirement as a part of your job, right? So I am from a mathematics background, basically same college as yours, BITS Goa. Right, and still I find it incredibly painful to go through the entire research paper. Not a thing to boast about. But do you have any like effective ways to go through a research paper and grasp the the ideas from it effectively?
Okay. So I very recently, in the last 1 week itself, I encountered this problem where I was learning about text segmentation. That means you give a full blob of text, can you divide it into paragraphs automatically? And the first paper that I read that came out in 2015, it used a lot of mathematical notation. So I just understood on a high level, but I didn't really gain insight into it. So what I did was, there are few reasons why papers are on a higher abstract level. When I traced back, I realized that there was a paper that got released in 2000 that explained the mathematics very well in a simple and intuitive manner. So what happened was that when it came to this paper in 2015, their job was not to make aware of the math and build, explain that beautifully. They just mentioned a reference to the paper and abstracted out and gave the mathematical formula and some notation. So one way is read the abstract, read the ending. So the quickest way that I do is I read the abstract and I read the ending and see whether the results, accuracy and things like that are at least in my line of thought to implement and execute. If they are, then whatever reference papers that were mentioned, I go back and delve to them. And what happens is that usually the first set of papers explain it very well. And as it progresses, just like Chinese whispers, it gets diluted and it gets complicated. And people tend to assume that whoever is reading this has the full previous background. That was one approach. Second thing is, actually, if the code is available for any of them, try to execute the code almost on a function level, because unless you execute it on a function level with some input that you give, etc., it is extremely hard. And foundational concepts, if you have them, that's great to understand the paper fast. But a lot of mathematical papers build on abstractions quite a lot. So today, if I read a new paper and if I write a new paper as well, I would assume that people would know what large language models are. I would assume some things that are not obvious for novice, right? The only way novice can crack is to trace back that hierarchy and start from the bottom. Yeah.
Great. My last question is where do you think reinforcement learning stands from the standpoint of a practitioner, right? So for someone working at a corporate job, is it worthwhile to look at RL, like to develop a skill in RL?
Good question. So I always say to people that unless you see a real practical use case and it's on a growth phase, do not invest huge amount of time in it. whether it is graph neural networks or reinforcement learning, etc. There are, of course, there are use cases that are there, but it's not widespread. And the reason why I say is that, like I mentioned previously, if you're paid to learn reinforcement learning by your manager and your company has a use case, go for it. If you have spare time and want to learn something, always follow the money or trends, either of these things, and latch onto it and learn only those things. Because if you're learning something for just out of interest, that's a different thing. But if you're looking to accelerate in career, etc., I always say that spend 3 years after you graduate in just understanding what you need to learn instead of just learning. Because a lot of people I see, like my friends, just went into VLSI design and they just settled in that after 10 years. I come from electrical engineering background, embedded systems and VLSI design. I did that. But later on, I took my sweet time to, narrow on to things that will give the most ROI. And a lot of times what happens is that I see that my friends have no way to get out of that, because right now they have 10 years of experience in VLSI design, but not always things are rosy, right? Sometimes chip design is a race to the bottom. I'm not quoting in general, but some people feel stagnant and my friends are not happy with that. So it's always important to put time in understanding what you want to learn. Just like if I had 10 hours to cut a tree, 8 hours is sharpening the axe and 2 hours is just cutting, right? It's similar.
Thanks a lot for the great answers.
Awesome. Go ahead, Sai.
Yeah, hi Ram. I know it's late, but maybe one question.
Sure.
So, I mean, two questions. So, one thing, I mean, one of the major challenges, NLP people faces, getting data. Maybe I don't know how you got the data for question, questions and answers. I mean, all. So, I mean, it's very hard to tag the data, and also if you want to buy it or make people tag, it's very costly stuff. And I mean, so what are the ways you recommend to get so that you can implement good use cases with this? And second thing is, you already productionized some of the models, which are Precision and Super Mean.
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you do real-time production monitoring or metrics, so that you can improve accordingly, the OOBs or all the, I mean, is there a decrease in the accuracy or any of the metrics? How do you do the real-time? I mean, training time you have the ways, but the real-time productionized models in the serverless deployment, how do you do kind of these monitoring stuff?
Okay. So what was the first question? Sorry.
The data gathering thing.
Okay, yeah. So one thing is that getting domain specific data is tough. Broadly, I would categorize data gathering in 3 ways. One is with code, like Beautiful Soup. You go and whatever domain websites are available, you scrape and build things. That's one way. Second way is without using code. There are kind of tools like ParseHub, etc., where you can create a scraper, etc. Without code, you can show to the elements to parse and it will parse. That I have used that at scale. For example, to get all the Y Combinator companies or to get all the startups under an accelerator and visualize them. I've used that personally using ParseHub, etc., and we could scrape even 10,000 companies. So Beautiful Soup, but it has limitations because bots are being detected and they're flagged and other things like that. So no-code tools like ParseHub, etc., help when you want to emulate a browser parsing and things like that. And we have had quite a lot of success using them. And the third way is actually generating data. And I have used GPT-3 successfully to generate quite a lot of data for even some of the domain specific tasks. For example, a simple prompt is that here is a sentence and its corresponding paraphrased version. I give sentence 1, paraphrase 1, then I give sentence 2, paraphrase 2, and for the prompt I ask sentence 3 : and I just leave it like that, it will completely generate, GPT-3 will completely generate a new sentence and its paraphrased version. Now I have created a Streamlit UI where you can run this, and every time a sentence and its paraphrase is generated newly by GPT-3, I can accept that or reject that. If I accept that, it goes into a pandas data frame that is stored. So it's almost like a GPT-3 based annotation tool that I created, and it worked fairly well even for some domain things. But to be honest, like if you're thinking about complex medical data and annotations, not just text generations, but other kind of annotations, it gets a little complex. But the other way is to fasten the process. As simple as that. Use these tools like semantic search and other things, etc., to fasten the process. I'll tell you how. For example, there is this quad data set, right? It's a question answering data set, and it has maybe 100,000 examples. In the initial version, I used squad data set inversely to train a question generation model. So I give context and I give answer, it will generate a question. And what I did was, out of the 100,000 samples, whatever I did basic filtering and I got maybe 20,000 samples. Out of the 20,000 samples, I wanted to fine tune OpenAI's GPT-3. But I know that there's a lot of redundancy and other things, and also cost will be high. If I train 20,000 samples, it might cost $100, etc. For me, I wanted to test out by training 500 or 1,000 samples. All I simply did was I did semantic search to embed all the 20,000 samples. Then I created only 1,000 clusters and picked one of them, so that in my training data set, I have the highest diversity, because those 1,000 samples come from different clusters. Now my GPT-3 fine-tuned model will be better than just giving similar questions that might be spread out in the 20,000 that I filtered. These are some things, but it's not directly solvable, but some hacks with NLP techniques, things that you can use.
Right. I mean, so there's no one way. It's like hit and trial to get the right.
Yeah, definitely hit and trial. And domain specific data, definitely hard. You can attempt to do with GPT-3 for some domains. And like I mentioned, I did have some success. But for like core things like extremely legal and medical, it might be tough.
Can I say that that was a time which was highest taken time in the whole process?
Not really. I mean, I use a lot of hacks for question. I think the biggest problem has been model deployment in the initial stages. Because I have this T5 trained model, but if I try to deploy it serverlessly, then there's quite a lot of lag time. So I could only deploy it on a full scale server, which costed me $400 a month, and operational costs of question were like $500 or $600 a month. It was too much, right? And GPT fine tuning was not stable up until recently. Not that the fine tuning was stable, but once you fine tune the model, you need to do inference at scale with that, right? And GPT-3 had some issues where if you had a fine tuned model, it will intermittently fail or status invalid and things like that. So that infrastructure got decent only in the recent times. So most of my recent things have been because of these things as well. It's not just my work. And coming to monitoring part, to be very honest, I only monitor if my API is down or not. But beyond that, if I have to speak, data drift and other things are higher level concerns. Once you have, let's say, a multi-million-dollar company, then those things will become a concern. But for me at this stage, that kind of monitoring is unnecessary. All I need to make sure is that if my model is just doing inference or not. And every 6 months with the new data that I collected, if I train a model, that's good enough. I don't need to move as fast and deliver the delta immediately. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, makes sense. But anyways, you could suggest that could happen, maybe out of your previous experience or something.
Data monitoring and other things, drift, etc.
for API, model monitoring and metrics?
I mean, so to be honest, I don't have depth knowledge in model monitoring, etc. The things that I use is I use semantic search quite a lot. It could be cluster by semantic search. I mean vector embeddings quite a lot. For example, if let's say I did 100 inference today, like people came and use 100 times question.ai, 100 API calls. I know what's the text input, what's the text output, right? So I do quick cluster dashboards of understanding whether social science content or health content is being used, so that I can think about what I should do for my models next to better train on health data or things like that, etc. But beyond that, to be honest, I don't have any large scale monitoring or data drift things, etc. Yeah, no experience with that. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it was a great session. I mean, long time you have taken a lot of answers, a lot of insights.
Awesome. Thanks for staying so long. I know that you joined in early itself and stayed so far. I know that you also have a question generation course taken as well. Thanks for the continuous support. Yeah.
Thanks for the session as well. I mean,
awesome.
If it is there in the future, we will take it also.
Awesome. Thanks. Any other questions from anybody else? Okay, if we don't have anything, we'll wind up. Okay, AS has a question. Please go ahead. How do I address you, AS? Please go ahead. We can hear you. Is this model on Hugging Face? Okay, I have some messages from you. Yeah, that's my model on Hugging Face. Good paraphrasing model. To be honest, I didn't find a good paraphrasing model on Hugging Face for one specific reason. The short answer is that none of the datasets, open source datasets, are of high quality. So it does not matter which model you use, because no one actually looked at the datasets. But if you really look at the datasets, you know that at least 50% of them are not of high quality at all, 50% of the samples. So that's the main reason. It's not about the model as such. Basically, you can take a good T5 model and train high quality paraphraser if you have high quality data set. The only thing that is missing is high quality data set, because para NMT, I've looked at all the data sets available for paraphrasing. None of them are up to the mark. Okay, how do I suggest high quality data set? There is a hack that you can use. Basically, you collect maybe, let's say, 10,000 or 100,000 sentences, then use a high quality API on Rapid API, or you go to Quillbot and use their paraphraser, or you go to Grammarly and use their paraphraser. I don't know if you need to pay a little bit, but you use Quillbots or some other paraphraser. So you already take an existing high quality paraphraser and you use that to get the training data. Now you can use that to train your T5 transform model. Yeah. So there are few companies that have good paraphrasers, AISEO and Quillbot, Grammarly, etc. So you can take your data set, paraphrase that. Now you take sentences from there, and then you train your own T5 model. Yeah. I don't know what your questions are about, Black Hat World and other things. I have no clue. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just answering direct messages from AS. For personal reasons, he might have hidden his identity. I do mostly build in public, so definitely nothing worried about competition, etc. But anyways, okay. Any other questions from anybody else? Okay. looks like there are no questions, so we will stop the recording. Thanks, Sai Vignan. Thanks a lot.